Justin Stoddard here, the Think Bigger Mastermind. Oh my goodness, just had an amazing interview with Nick Hoogendam, this guy right here beside me. And we had a blast, didn't we, Nick?
It was a lot of fun.
It was a ton of fun.
Some good conversation.
So listen in, share it. Looking forward to getting your reviews and your feedback on it. And thanks again, man. It was awesome. Good times. So the big question is this: how do those of us with crazy amounts of ambition, how do we think bigger than the building of our own empires? How do we simultaneously seek success and significance, income and impact? My name is Justin Stoddard, and welcome to the Think Bigger Mastermind. Super excited today to be here with my friend Nick Hoogendam. Nick has become someone in my inner circle from whom I learn a lot on a really regular basis. And we have some really exciting content for you today that is really going to change the way that you think about your learning, your education, and the way you position yourself in the marketplace. So thank you, Nick, for being here.
I'm excited. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I was actually wondering if it was ever going to happen.
You're wondering if you made the cut?
Did I? Yeah. Apparently, either that or he ran out of people to interview. I slide right in.
There's going to be a big demand for people saying, bring that guy back. He just upped the game. So Nick and I met, it's been probably 3 years ago, I would say. And one thing that I identified is that Nick and I were different people when we first met. Mm-hmm. I was fairly new in the industry that I'm in. You were newish?
I mean, newish. That was probably 2 years in. I'm almost 6 years in now. Okay. So yeah,
great.
I would consider that pretty green still.
Yeah. And we were working on really identifying our identity, our unique value proposition. And we got pretty passionate at the things that we were learning. Mm-hmm. And it kind of started taking us down one path. We did an event together, and we've since pivoted. We probably pivot really regularly, and are on a path, a pretty accelerated path, I would say, of learning and iterating and implementing. And we've really now put together kind of a core group of what we call our board of directors,
right?
Where we get together on a weekly basis to discuss digital and business strategy and give each other feedback. And it's become a really powerful source for us to really become different people. Looking back for you, Nick, when you say the professional that you were, the perspective that you had on the landscape of your business and industry, which is in the insurance industry, how do you see the world differently now than the way you saw it when we first met?
Sure. Well, it's certainly night and day. And to give a little context, my background prior to those first 2 years was in the restaurant world, and not as an owner, just as an employee. And so transitioning into a role where all of the outcomes of the business lives and dies with me was a big learning curve in and of itself. And so I think 2 years in, when we first met, I was starting to get a grasp of exactly what that looks like and how that works, but I was still very inwardly focused on learning my craft as it's taught to me from other people within my specific company, not even my industry.
Right.
And so one of the things that, after meeting Justin and a couple of the other guys that are in our group that meets weekly, one of the things that I think really was a paradigm shift for me was understanding that there's arguably more to learn from people outside of your business and industry than there is from within. And I think that's been proven out a million times over the past 3 years as we've gone deeper, becoming a bigger part of each other's businesses. So fast forwarding to now, the lens that I look through is completely different. In so many different ways, I think it would almost take too long to articulate, but I definitely feel like I make much quicker and smarter decisions. I've also uncovered new passions and interests of mine that I would directly attribute to my relationship with you and Tony and Brandon and the other guys that are within that closed group that we have. So it's been cool to see our growth, to reflect back and look on those changes within myself. I try to be as humble as I can, but also think that there's some things to brag about in there. I'm pretty proud of.
That's cool. One thing that you said that really resonates with me is that you can learn a lot from people outside your industry. Right? We tend to look, whether it's from direct supervisors, peers, who has done what I do at a high level within my industry. I know for me, when I got involved in the title and escrow industry, that wasn't my background. So I didn't, and I looked around, I was like, I saw some people who had built great businesses, but they didn't do it using a method that I could ever get passionate about.
Right.
And so for me, it became a very different avenue and path, and I began to learn and pull from things that I had done in the past and things that other people were doing. And it instilled a lot of passion to where it didn't necessarily matter what I did for a living. I realized that the fundamentals of building business, of marketing a brand, and of getting business and creating a really high-level customer experience is pretty universal across most industries.
I agree.
There's tweaks, right? But what somebody is doing in some other industry, if you can learn that and apply it at a different level, I found that to be really, really interesting, because I can be learning things that no one else in my industry is even thinking to look at, which creates an entirely different conversation that the client recognizes as being like, I've never heard it said this way, right?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. I think that as you're talking and things are running through my head, and those first very initial interactions that we had, where I'm at that point in time, like just scratching the surface of what I could learn from people from outside my industry. I think you hit it right on the head. Is at the conceptual level, it's all the same. Once you get down into actual strategy and tactics, that's where things change and are different based off of the actual type of business that you're in. But the things that I always think about the most as it relates to any business is, what's your differentiating and competitive advantage? Like how are you branding yourself? What are you doing that is 100% unique or close to it from the peers that you have within your industry or your competition? I think that's one of the most important concepts that for some reason is really easily overlooked. And then the second thing is where are the eyeballs? Where's the attention at? I think if you can have a message that is completely different from the other people in your industry, and you create that kind of pattern interrupt, and then you are very strategic in where you place that message, and you do so in a way that garners more attention and engagement and interaction than all of your competition, unstoppable.
I couldn't agree more. I know you have a deep passion for learning. It's fun because within this mastermind group that we get together with on a regular basis, I feel like each week we show up as different people, because all of us are learning at a really high level. Yeah. And it's fun to hear, well, this week I was learning from this person and this is what I found. Where even on a week-to-week basis, it's not even the same group of people from a different industry and a different industry perspective that are simply not so close to what we do for a living that they can give good advice. But each week I show up and I have people that were brighter than the people I met with the week before. Right. And their experience and that their accomplishments and the way they've implemented what they've done creates this ongoing, really exciting relationship.
I couldn't agree more. I definitely think we're learning at a fast clip. I think it's very helpful that we get bored easily. That's definitely a characteristic of mine. So in order to stay excited, I've constantly got to be learning something new. You hear the term kind of serial entrepreneur, and we've had some conversations about that in the past where, sometimes this process of learning and the excitement that we have is a bit of a detriment because it pulls our focus away from what really has the opportunity for the biggest impact. But at the same time, it's a necessary evil because the level of growth that's created from it, even the mindset shifts that come from learning a new skill set or learning a new product or program, the fact that I, quote unquote, wasted all of those hours in the education and the learning, they're not wasted in the slightest, because the the mindset shifts and the conceptual understanding that I've gained of whatever it is that I'm now never going to use is still very applicable in other aspects of my business.
Yeah, no, it's been a really fun ride, and I think that, you know, across all industries, when you find serial entrepreneurs and you can actually keep their attention on one thing, yet give them the freedom to innovate within that. Because I know one of the detriments of being a serial entrepreneur is that you never actually stick with anything long enough to create great success. Like, it actually takes time on task over time to be great at anything.
Agreed.
And so there tends to be this shiny object syndrome, right, of people jumping to something this one's going to pay big because, man, it's a powerful concept. But if you can sink your teeth into an industry and then be a serial entrepreneur in the way that you go about dominating that thing, I think that's a key recipe for success that both you and I have committed ourselves to. Is that this is what we want to do for a living, and let's use all of that good mojo, energy, passion for learning to just be killer at that.
I agree. I think it's a matter of balance and moderation, and developing a skill set that frankly is unnatural for me. The fact that we do bounce around to the new and shiny means we know a little bit about a lot of things. But even right now, and in our conversation in the meeting we had earlier today, I've become extremely focused on this one thing. And that is something that I needed to learn. That is something that is not natural to me, to the point where I'm saying no to opportunities. I'm excluding different directions and things that I could go within my business to focus exclusively on this one thing. And I think that the ability to do that, coupled with the serial entrepreneurial nature, is almost like the perfect cocktail, because you just bam, plow through this, and this, and then you latch on or hone into the one that's going to have the most success, and then that's what you focus on and drive with.
You know, there's a pace at which entrepreneurs have to move, right? And probably that we're wired to move. And it's funny, some might say, like, wait a minute, Justin, you're not in business for yourself. Like, you're not an entrepreneur. The majority of my life, up until the past probably 3.5 years ago, I've either ran my own small business or someone else's. To where if you look at my track record, like, dude, you're totally an entrepreneur. What are you doing working for a big company? In fact, oftentimes get realtors that'll even say, are you happy there? How long are you going to be there?
Right.
I love what you're doing, but what's next? And I can honestly look them in the eye and say, this is what's next. But it's a better iteration of this. And so that for me becomes really exciting, because I feel that is what allows me to really innovate, is that same energy and passion that led me to be an entrepreneur is now what's going to help improve an industry, is my vision, right?
Agreed. And frankly, the word entrepreneur these days, like, who knows, who cares? Like, it's a word that's thrown around a little bit excessively. The definition of it, for me, accurate or not, is really someone that is taking on all of the risk and controls their own destiny, which I would argue that your role entails. Your success or failure is 100% dictated by your ability to perform and your drive and motivation to reach those next new levels. So anyways, that is definitely a tangent. But if entrepreneur is the buzzword that garners respect, I mean, you are one at a high level, in my opinion.
So the term was once shared with me, intrapreneur, which is someone who is an entrepreneur with inside of an existing industry or even big corporation, and that seemed to resonate with me because the DNA is the same, but the seat is different, and the objective is to really create massive change within a particular industry and or company.
Sure.
And that's been exciting to be able to really embrace that and not feel like I'm either cheating my own entrepreneurial DNA by going to work for a company, right? Or as even some would critique, not me particularly, but in general, of like, you're giving up the dream of who you should be. And it's like, that's not it, right?
Yeah.
This is exactly who I am. It's just I've chosen to exercise these talents and gifts and abilities and ambitions within this context, right?
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense. You are the success and failure of Justin Stoddard is in Justin Stoddard's hands.
Right.
He happens to also be within this other business that is Old Republic. But from what I understand, you decide when you show up, what day, you decide who you talk to, you decide how you talk to them, what strategies you implement, and at the end of the day, you've got to deliver for your business, for your family.
Right.
I don't. Anyways, we could split hairs all day on it.
Well, the purpose, I guess, for going down that path is I think that there's a lot of people in business. Obviously, the internet is rampant, and Instagram and all these other social mediums are rampant with what, if you're an ambitious professional, look like.
Okay.
And hopefully this gives maybe some freedom to some people to even think a little bit differently and realize that there's some major corporations and industries that need the entrepreneurial spirit, right? That need not you starting a small business all by yourself, some new idea, like some new invention, but there's already great revenue changing hands out there, and it could be a great life for you and an awesome opportunity and of great benefit to that corporation and or an industry to have that energy focused on that. So maybe that opens up some opportunities for some people that maybe they hadn't thought of or that they've been kind of like pushing aside.
Yeah, I think that one extremely important overlying theme or requirement for someone in the entrepreneurial role, which if we focus in on just this one piece, completely destroys the definition of having to be the owner of a business in order to be an entrepreneur, I think is just accountability. Is the understanding that 99% of the time, whatever happens to you is controlled by you. And perhaps an individual within a larger organization has a little bit less control than someone like myself, but at the same time, all of the decisions that a person makes lead up to this one final outcome. And if you are conscious of what that outcome is, what you want that outcome to be, you will likely make different decisions. I'm starting to ramble a little bit, but in my head I think about Grant Cardone, and I mean, he's a loud and big personality, but a lot of the stuff but a lot of the stuff that he says is pretty sharp.
Yeah, it's powerful.
And
brilliant man.
If anybody wants to go back and find the content where he talks about like having ownership in the decisions that you make in the outcomes, and understand that you really are in complete control, whether or not you're owning your own business or within another organization, you decide what that outcome looks like.
Talk to me a little bit, Nick, about the pace at which you learn. What does that look like for you on a day-to-day basis? How are you intaking as much as you do? How do you fit that in? And how do you decide of all the different channels out there, all the different things that you could be learning and people you could be learning from, how do you decide who's going to get your attention this week?
I don't know if the answer to that question is a good one. I mean, my hopes for an answer to that question would be very well thought out and structured, and the decisions are very intentional. And for me, it's really not that. I very much go towards the new and shiny, and there's a lot of that. And I suppose the decision isn't what gets my attention; it's more what keeps my attention. And if I make I can make a decision pretty quick whether or not this has any applications to me or my business, and then move on. The how of that, I don't even know if I can articulate. So much of what I learn about on a daily basis is like, it's a hobby almost. It's really freaking fun. I, over the past 2 weeks, have probably consumed like 20 plus hours of content about videography. And it's something that has business applications, which is why I'm still pursuing it, but it's also really fun. And if it wasn't fun, despite the fact that it could have significant benefits in my business, I would probably not be doing it, which I think is a strength and a disadvantage, potentially a significant disadvantage, because there's probably a lot of things out there that I really don't want to do that I should be doing. So as far as the direct answer to your question, like how do I decide what gets my attention, it's probably the answer to two questions, and they probably aren't. They're probably mutually exclusive, right? What's fun and what's benefit to my business? If it's fun and a benefit to my business, that's a pretty high priority. If it's fun and not, I don't know if I have the self-control to not do it, frankly. So I still do. And if it's beneficial to my business but not fun, that's really hard for me.
Well, I think you just outlined like the recipe for any marketer to get and keep people's attention? Is that
Yeah.
number one, there's got to be some entertainment value. It's got to be fun. And number two, there's got to be some benefit to it. I know for me, it's interesting when I wasn't the best student in high school. I mean, I had 3.8 in high school and 3.2 in college. I mean, it was on a downhill slide for sure. So I was finishing up college, right? But I realized like if I couldn't see a direct benefit to how this was going to help me grow business, like it was like pulling teeth. I would rather have my teeth pulled, maybe even my 2 front teeth. It was that painful.
Right.
But as soon as I said, wait a minute, I could apply this in my general contracting business today, I became a really intense learner. I think probably most people are like that. But it's interesting the fact that today we have access to so much that we ought not pursue knowledge of something that doesn't keep our attention, right? That's painful, that we've got to be force-fed, because the reality is whatever we do with that information is probably going to be as painful to some degree.
It's not sustainable if there's no enjoyment.
Right.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you hear stories about people that do what they love and they get paid for it. I mean, while that's hard to find, there's you may be in a position or a role that you don't love, but there's still components of that can be extremely enjoyable. And I think that enjoyment is necessary in order to last long term.
When you intake this much information, it sounds like a lot of it's on podcasts, you're watching videos. How do you what have you found to be some of the best tactics of actually having that show up as benefit to your business?
I think it's just implement. Again, I wish I had better answers to these, like step 1, step 2, step 3. But I mean, it depends on the topic that we're discussing. But
videography is something you've been studying.
As it relates to videography, I started watching all this stuff, and I've got some friends close to me that are doing it, and so I went and bought some camera gear, and then I started watching some videos of how to use the camera gear, and then I went and used the camera gear. And then I saw these really cool edits and transitions in videos, and so I was like, well, I think I can do that. So I went and shot some video and tried to put together those edits and transitions. It's almost like a chaotic execution. And I think maybe that's just how I've learned. I don't think I've ever articulated it or thought of it that way. But intense structure is something that doesn't exist in my life, probably to my detriment in a lot of ways. But I've got to imagine in the circumstances that we're talking about, it's probably really beneficial because I almost irrationally decide. And I think that lack of rationality probably pushes me along quicker than others might move.
And something that stands out to me of what you just said right there is that if we find ourselves learning for the sake of learning, like the forever college student, right, who's got 20 degrees, but we can be that same person in today's YouTube era, right, where we have thousands of hours of YouTube videos watched, but yet our businesses look the same, our lives look the same. Something you shared I think is interesting is that you learn. You go seeking the tactical stuff you can apply is one component, and then you don't try and consume it all and then go do it. But you're learn, apply, which causes you to take this sequentially ordered step-by-step forward process to become somebody different than you were. When I met you, you had probably zero interest in videography.
Correct.
Zero interest in...
Well, interestingly enough, and not to interrupt, but doubling back to our recent conversation about the serial entrepreneurship and my my kind of zipping from one thing to another, videography is, that's new for me.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even use that word. I'm definitely not a videographer yet. I have a camera, and I kind of know how to use it, and I know how to put videos together and then post them. But, I mean, that in and of itself is brand new to me.
Which, if you get a chance to go see Nick's stuff, tell the audience where they can find some of the stuff that you do as a hobby and as a sport.
Yeah, so it's Nick's PNW Experience. It lives on YouTube, it lives on Facebook, Instagram, and it's at this point still really kind of finding my identity as it relates to all of this. I mentioned videography being something that's very new, but I've had a blast doing it. Yeah. And the premise behind it is the fact that I grew up in the restaurant industry in the Willamette Valley, paralleling all of these amazing wineries, which became a significant passion of mine. ultimately, I ended up exiting that industry when I met my wife, and I was working restaurant hours, and she was working your traditional business hours. We never saw each other. And so, long story short, I landed in this role in the insurance world, loving the fact that I own a business, kind of by accident. But this video approach and this YouTube channel I've created is kind of my reconnect with a community that I love and a highlight of a place that I love. And it's been an interesting journey so far. I won't claim any level of success yet because the numbers don't justify that statement. But I think what's cool about it, and maybe a cool lesson that can come from it, is that the process is a blast. And the fact that I don't have hundreds or thousands or millions of subscribers isn't really that big of a deal to me yet. Now, maybe 3 years down the road, if I'm still pouring as much time and energy into it, maybe that's a sign that I'm not as good as I think I possibly could be. But regardless, it's still extremely fun.
So similar, obviously those that follow the podcast, Think Bigger Mastermind, there's no real direct business benefit for what I do as a day-to-day person, right? I mean, it's not. I mean, there was to start off some kind of baked-in strategy, but it's really taken on my own passion for learning and for getting into the minds of people that I respect and admire that are doing cool things, and to be able to bring that out to share with other people, and then hopefully that inspires other people to want to do the same, right? So I can totally relate with what you're saying there.
Like you're essentially disconnected from the outcome.
Yes.
You're unemotional about the outcome.
Yes.
Which I think, whether in what we're talking about, it's actually something I talk very heavily about with my customers or potential customers. Perhaps this will end up being a cool segue. But I think that it's possible that your best work is created when the outcome does not matter. Because your motives are purely in the doing.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, what produces some pretty amazing results.
When you think about, I'm going to use a little football analogy here. People talk about the difference between maybe high school or college football compared to professional football, right? This is an argument as to which one's better or not, but they do say it's been said that the pure form of the sport is where money isn't the issue, right? And that's where people really develop into great players. And obviously they take it to another level. But I think that's us right now, right? And we're at the high school level.
I'm going to have an NFL player salary one day.
Exactly. And but at this point, we're doing it because we love it.
Yeah.
Like I do this because I love it, right? And I'm obviously learning the strategy. That there's a bigger strategy at play that others are fully implementing, which is the more attention you garner, the more additional business opportunities you have. But there's no direct call. Like I don't ask people here for title and escrow business.
Right.
You don't, in your Nick's PNW, you aren't asking people to support you as an insurance agent.
Correct. This is actually probably the first time the two have ever been in the same conversation.
Interesting. I know that there was a point at one point of the people that you're interviewing are very successful business owners, right, in the winery industry. There was a question posed, are you asking these people for business? You said, no, that's not the intent of this. And it kind of brought us all back to this concept of pursuing a passion and documenting it, right? Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about that. Like document the process of becoming great rather than faking being great. Like it'd be better to have you document when you absolutely sucked than trying to put off that you are somebody that doesn't suck, right? People appreciate that more. Yeah. And I think to some degree, whether or not one would argue that we suck or not, I think we're getting better.
Sure.
And this process of documenting these early conversations as we're finding our passion, whether or not it turns into a boon for our day jobs or not, that's not the purpose of it, right? What motivates you, I guess, to continue to stay disconnected from the results, right? Like, what else, like what other advice would you give to somebody that said, yeah, my passion is photography or my passion is bowling, but I don't know how that relates to what I do for a living, yet I feel like I could document my journey and I would enjoy that.
Sure. I mean, the answer to that is pretty simple in my opinion. As we mentioned, attention, eyeballs, what you're doing is creating some sort of a following. Hopefully what I do does the same at some point. But ultimately, the people that become your audience and stick around and stay are likely to be people that either see a lot of value in what you do or a lot of entertainment value, or they are like you.
Yeah.
And I want to do business with people that do and like the same things that I do. I think that it's going to create a longer customer relationship. Things are just going to go deeper. You've got more in common. And for me, in a very relational business, if I find someone that likes pottery, we have nothing to talk about, frankly, because I know nothing about pottery. It does not interest me in the slightest. But on the flip side, if we've got someone that works at a winery or loves to go wine tasting and has got a cool wine collection at home, we could probably talk for hours. Those are going to be great relationships from a business perspective. And so I think that for people that have any sort of sales type role where relationships are direct correlation to the success of the business, that pursuing your passions is the best idea you could possibly have. Because ultimately you're going to attract, and then introducing this documentation process, because if nobody knows I like wine except for my wife because we drink wine together, then it doesn't matter. I'll roll the dice and maybe run into somebody that actually does as well, and they become a customer, and that's great. On the flip side, though, I'm actually documenting this process of me going out and enjoying wine with these people and talking about it, and then those individuals that consume that content on a regular basis, they're almost self-identifying themselves as someone that I would enjoy being around. And if that results in a business opportunity, it's great. That is not the main priority.
So I love what you just said there, and I'm gonna unpack that a little bit, because I hope the audience caught it. Is that yes, this strategy is fun for us, and yes, it can be a hobby. But I also have 6 kids, and they're more important to me than some of these hobbies, right? You've got a beautiful wife, and she's probably more important to you than some of this stuff.
Oh, certainly.
So is there some sort of business connection? I'm not going to neglect that there's not.
Right.
The beauty of what you just said is that it doesn't have to be a direct one. It can be just simply you gathering your congregation of people that those are the people that you'll naturally choose from, who you're going to be in business with.
Yep.
You're going to attract a bunch of like-minded people that think like you do, that do what you do outside of work. And so naturally those people are going to be the pool of people from which you do business, which, like you said, creates a really cool life.
Yes.
Because now you're surrounded with people that want to be in the same conversations as you during business hours or not, right? You know, the Instagram hashtag culture is really interesting in going out and finding those congregations and or creating them, right?
Sure.
To be able to utilize that tool and other similar social mediums to be able to really go find your crowd, right? And go take part and contribute to a crowd.
Yeah, I mean, that takes it down pretty tactical, but I couldn't agree more that is a fantastic example on kind of a micro level of what we're describing here. Yeah. If someone includes a hashtag on an Instagram post, and then someone else searches that hashtag and finds that post, assuming they are actually related, which doesn't always happen, there's a high likelihood that there's a connection there. And my wine hashtag analogy as it relates to my life, you know, others are going to search that and they're going to latch onto it, and then ultimately maybe one day we'll cross paths and do business together, and that will be a good relationship.
So last question before we wrap up here. Why do you think attention matters? I mean, people might say, you know, I'm more of an introverted person. I feel like I can continue to succeed at business without living in this economy of gathering attention. What would be your rebuttal to that of why does it matter to have eyeballs, whether it be directly what you do for a living, right? Creating a huge persona in the insurance industry, and or in addition to that, creating a huge persona outside of that. What advice would you have to someone whose maybe rebuttal is, I don't want to live in the public square?
Sure. I think that in order to have any sort of a successful business, excuse me, attention is a requirement. And attention now means different things than it did even 20 years ago, where attention was a brand on a billboard or a TV commercial. Our phone is now our billboard in that TV commercial. And so what you see everybody doing is putting themselves forth as the brand, as the talking head that's trying to garner that attention. And I can see where an introverted individual may struggle with that. Frankly, I'm an introvert, believe it or not. I enjoy being around people for an amount of time, and then I need to not be around people in order to recharge. That's something that's very strongly built within me. Yet I still have learned how to step out of my comfort zone and get into conversations like this in front of cameras like this. But I think that, I mean, as far as solutions for people that really struggle with that, one of our quote unquote mentors, we don't actually know him, I'd love to meet him, but Russell Brunson, he talks about having an attractive character. An attractive character doesn't have to be you. If you're in an organization, you hire someone to be the spokesperson for your company or your brand, and ultimately you can use that individual to garner attention, and which is a requirement for marketing a brand, and ultimately accomplish potentially the same goal without the level of discomfort. But I think, as doubling back to your original question, which is why is attention such an important aspect of business, is simple. And I don't think I'm going to blow in by saying I'm the best insurance and financial guy in the world and nobody knows it. And it really doesn't matter. I've got to have people to talk to. I've got to have people that know who I am. And in order to do that, I have to be creative in the ways that I steal the attention from wherever it is at that point in time and redirect it to myself. And it's a very simple concept, but it was a huge light bulb to me when I finally recognized it, that it is a Gary Vaynerchuk attention arbitrage is what he calls it. He day trades attention. I don't claim to be Gary Vaynerchuk, but that concept to me is so simple, but is so powerful and is just a very unique way of looking at that topic. What can I do to get more attention than you? I've got to steal attention away from everything and to redirect it for me. I'm not just competing with other guys in my insurance space. I'm competing with 9gag on, you see the cool Facebook videos. Like, I need to be more interesting than them.
And Netflix and
lunch or a novel or whatever. The radio versus a podcast. Like, it's everywhere. And so it's the cool thing, fun to learn that.
And I love what you said. I learned tons there, and I couldn't agree more. And I think the fun thing that we're discovering is that attention doesn't have to be necessarily or only in what you do for a living in order for you to make a great living at that. Right? The fact that they've got Nick Hoogendam in their head that may be all about wineries may be exactly the right recipe to help you win big in the insurance world without you ever talking about insurance when you are interviewing people that own vineyards.
Yep.
Like, powerful concept, right? Is find something you're passionate about, you can talk about and be a part of and do all day long, document it, share it with other people, and don't always have to tie in and ask to come do business with you.
I think the biggest piece of advice, and it's something that I've only recently learned how to articulate, is to be unemotional about the outcome. Especially for me in an advice-related business, in an industry where once I'm identified as an insurance professional, there's instantly walls that go up. The fact that I can go have a conversation with someone in a meeting and know internally that, I want to win their business, but also at the same time, in the complete opposite end of that spectrum, not care at all if I win their business is a really powerful thing. And it can help you in creating sustainable activity. It can help you in interactions that are business related, because people notice that.
Yeah.
They know right away. I was actually at an event the other day and someone asked me for my business card. And I was like, sure, here you go. And the guy next to him knew what I did. He just heard me, I gave a little presentation. He's like, I do not want your business card. I was like, okay, I wasn't going to give it to you. And he's like, that's a good answer. compared to the other individual that was in the room that was handing out her business card to every single person that she could stop. It's like, I don't care, man. If you want to do business with me, do business with me. If you don't, I'm moving on.
Well, I think success breeds success, and when people feel like you don't need them to be successful, you're already there, or you are on the path to success, it makes you all the more attractive, right?
Yep.
Is that their success isn't contingent upon you saying yes. It's like, this person is awesome. Maybe I ought to learn from them because they're awesome, right? They're helping a lot of people, and it really changes that dynamic. So,
and I don't want to, thinking back over what I just said, this feels like a lot of arrogance in those statements. And am I allowed to say that I wasn't trying to be arrogant? I don't know if that actually accomplishes the goal that I'm trying to accomplish with what I'm saying right now. But really, it does come from a very genuine place. Like, in what I do, I care deeply about helping people.
Yeah.
And I am emotionally attached to the wins. And I want them badly. But I'm not emotionally attached to the losses, because there's always another opportunity.
Powerful stuff, man. I think we could go on all day. This has been the fastest 40 minutes I remember in a long time. So thank you for tuning in and sharing your brilliant mind with the audience here at the Think Bigger Mastermind. And I look forward to the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Please, if you like this, share it with somebody else. I think there's a lot of people that really benefit from what Nick has to say. And I would encourage you to share it in whatever way you can. And please give us a review. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
See you. I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Think Bigger Mastermind with me, your host, Justin Stoddard. Now, here's how you can show me some digital love in return. Number 1, subscribe to the show. Number 2, give me a review. And number 3, go think bigger.